last class. So we went over this query. So I'm going to do a few more queries with the exist command. So let's look at the next query. And I'm picking up queries that we've done earlier using both the cross product and the in. So this next one is select employees who have dependents of the same sex. So they have dependents of the same sex as the employee. So the way we did this, so we've done it with cross product. Let me write the way we did it with the in. So we have select fname from employee E where SSN in, and then you have the subquery select ESSN from dependent where D dot sex is equal to E dot sex. So we had done this with the in, so I'm going to do the same thing with the exist. So with the exist, it's so here you say where exists, and then we have select star from dependent D where D dot sex is equal to E dot sex. And then in always in exist, you have to also use the condition that joins the two tables. So we have and E dot SSN is equal to ESSN. I can just say SSN is equal to. Okay, so, and again, like I mentioned in the last class, this is equivalent to saying in relational calculus, it's saying print X element of employee if there exists Y element of dependent such that Y dot sex is equal to X dot sex and Y dot ESSN is equal to X dot SSN. Okay, so I hope everyone's kind of got the exist command. So I'm going to do a few more queries. So just so you get familiar, and I would recommend that you type out these queries in SQL. So the next one, again, this is something you've done several times in relational algebra and previously. So list first name of employees who are managers. So we've done this using the in, so I'm just going to do it now using the exist. So we have select fname from employee where exists select star from department So in you would just leave it that way, but now you have to do the join condition. So we say where manager SSN is equal to SSN. So, I mean, that's the real difference between the two, is that you have to put in the join condition when you use the exist. Let me do one more, and this time I would like you to try it out. So this next query, again, we've done this with several times in different manners. So, um, so list department name of departments in Houston, or so list D name of departments that are in Houston. So I would like you to try this out. Okay, so I hope, I mean, all of you, when you use exists, you've got something similar to this. So again, it's exactly like the N, other than the fact that you have to remember to put the join condition. So in this case, they're exactly the same name, D number, so you have to connect it with the table. Um, so, um, so now I want to go back to that query where Wong is worker or manager, and show you, because that was a slightly more complicated query compared to the rest. So we did several versions of this. So we did query one, list projects where Wong is worker or manager. And then we had query two, where Wong is neither a worker. So list projects where Wong is neither a worker nor a manager. So we had done this with in. So I want to, instead of writing the whole thing down, just go back and find that query. I think we did this. Just 1 second. Yes, let me just pick up this query. So we have, so I don't want to rewrite the whole thing down for this one. So we had, okay, so we had this query. So this was the using the in and the not in. So the so for query one was the using the answer to query one is where we use the in or p number in, and when you say is neither a worker nor a manager, that's where we did the not in. So that's where we did the not in, and the and. If you wrote this in, I just want to write this down in relational calculus. So this would be, okay, so let's say that this where P number in, so let's say this is set A and this is set B. So in relational calculus, query 1 would be saying print X element of project if X dot number is an element of A union B. And then query 2 is print X element of project if X dot P number is not an element of A union B. So this was the one we did using the in. So I want to do the same thing using exists and not exists. So let me write this query down. So using the exists, we have select P number from project P where exists. And then we have select star from project department employee where dnum is equal to d number and is equal to SSN and last name is equal to Wong. And then you also have to write down and this is the join condition. So P dot P number is equal to P number. So this is the and then we have or exists. Select star from works employee where ESSN is equal to SSN and last name is equal to Wong. And then again, you have to add the condition and P dot P number is equal to PNO. Okay, so it is again very similar to the in, other than the fact that you have to put in the join condition. And similarly, if you're going to do the second query, query 2, you would have to say not exists. So then it would be not exists. And then this would be an and. This would be the not exists. Okay, so I hope you've kind of understood how the exists works with this one. And if you wrote this again down in relational calculus, you would have to, you can convert the whole thing into relational calculus and do it. It's just like we did for the previous query. But I think that for this particular query, it's a pretty straightforward conversion from the in to the exists. So any questions on this one? Okay, so then okay, so I want you to try out this next query. So again, we did this with the in. So list projects that are not in the same location has its department. So can you try this out? I think we did it in the last class using in. Okay, so did everyone get this? Any questions? Did you? Okay, so so I want to go. So I'm assuming that all of you have got the exists and not exists. Oh, this should be not exists. Okay. So I want to go back to the query that kind of motivated this exists. So I think I started again. This was in the last lecture. Trying to see, was it here? Where did I start up? Where I started motivating? Which one was it? Yes. So this was the query we were talking about. This was in the last lecture, and we were talking about this query. So query one was select social security number, list social security number of employees who work on a project in department number 4. So I started up with this one. So we did query 1, and then we did query 2, which was employees who work in at least one project that is not in department 4. And then we did query 3, who lists social security number of employees who do not work on any projects in controlled by department number 4. And then finally, we came to this particular query, list social security number of employees who work on all projects controlled by department number 4. And so this was the query where I said I motivated the exists, and I said that this particular query, it's a lot simpler to do it with exists and not exist operator. So I want to come back to this now, and I'm going to start with query number 1. I'm going to write it with exists because so here we have done it using the in operator. So I'm going to start doing it with the exists operator. So this is the last lecture one. So we'll go back to this. So list SSN of employees who work in department 4, who work on a project in department 4, sorry, who work on a project in department 4. Okay, so we had done it with N in the last class. So I just want to look at the N because they are very similar. Select list. Yeah, so it's okay. So we had done it using the in operator. So I want to do this now using the exists operator. So I just want to move this side. Okay. So we have select ESSN from works on where exists. And then you can write down your subquery. So select star from project where D number is equal to 4 and PNO is equal to P number. Okay, so this is the same query with the exists, and like I said, they are very similar to each other. So this was query number 1. So we'll do query number 2 was okay, I'll do the, let's do the ones who do not work on any projects. So list SSN of employees work on any project in department 4. So here, so that's this one where instead of the N, we are using the not N. So select ESSN from works on where P number not N. Select P number, well, so we did this in the last class. You can't just, so if you just say not N, I showed you that this particular query does not give you the answer to query 2. For query 2, if you say not N, it only prints out social security of number of employees who work in at least one project that is not in department 4. So what you have to do really for doing with the not in is, in order to do this query with the in not in, you would have to do, write it as, so again, this is from the last class. I just want to write it down. So that would be select ESSN, or it's SSN, from employees where SSN not in. And then the whole thing out here would be, if this whole thing is query 1. So if this whole thing is query 1, so that's this. So that's what you have to put out here is query 1. So that's how you do it with the not in. So I'm going to do it with the not exist. So it's going to be select SSN from employee where not exists. And then you have to write down the subquery. So so this is one way of doing it, using the not exists. So again, so here when you do with, when you're using within and exists, you're using a subquery. So this is, if you're looking at a programming at your code, this is really like using two loops. So this would be like saying for I going from 1 to number of employee, for j going from 1 to number of uh, works on multiplied, because this is a cross product of um, um, the works on and the project. So that's how these queries work. So that's how this one and this one really works. It's a nested loop actually, because you're picking up each row from the employee table, and then you go through every row from the nested loop. And that's how this query actually works internally, like I mentioned in the earlier classes. So you can also do it. So instead of doing it as 2 nested loops, you could also have done it with 3 nested loops. So you could have, done it as for I going from 1 to number of employees, for j going from 1 to number of employees in the works on table, and then for k going from 1 to number of rows in the project table. So you could do it as 3 loops. So writing the query that's equivalent to the 3 loops would be where not exists. And then you have 2 more subqueries here. So we'd have the first one. And then you have the third one. So it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to finish off this query in the next class, but I want you to try it out. So I haven't finished off. There should be one more subquery in here. It's just 3 levels. And so this query works exactly like the previous queries, but I would like you to try it out. So I'll continue on Friday. So unless you have any questions.